Guys, the round is starting in 3 minutes, so I really have to go now. But yeah, I'm playing against Ivan Saric, and I had a lot of preparation to do. If he plays e4, I think I'm pretty well prepared. I have some pretty interesting ideas, so now it's all up to me to just remember all of them during the game. But yeah, it's gonna be a tough game, I'm sure. Ivan is a big fighter, so just looking forward to it. And yeah, I'll see you guys after the game in the recap.
Welcome back, everyone, to today's recap from my game against Ivan Saric. And unfortunately, I lost my game, even though I had a couple of chances to at least hold a draw. But yeah, it can happen, and especially against such a strong player like Saric, still I'm quite disappointed because it's just a big setback in the tournament standings overall. But let's have a look at the game. He went e4, which I expected, and he went for the Italian, which was my preparation. Also, I focused a lot on the Ruy Lopez. That was another big thing. But he played the Gioco Piano, and here he went for this very modern line with a4. And in general, what white wants to do is just to gain space on the queen side with a5. The more standard way to play is for white just to go c3, and usually white wants to let's say h3, and usually when black goes a6, then white wants to go a4. This was like the old understanding of the Gioco Piano, because now what black would usually like is to go a5 to fix the structure, but since he already played a6, then it makes sense for white to go a4, since now a5 would be less sensible because it just loses a tempo. So this is why this line has never been played that often, because it does allow black to like fix the structure here with a5 right away. But a5 right away runs into some ideas, I think, with bishop e3, and then this is like a very modern way of playing. I think here white has even some ideas with long castle, like knight c3, queen e2, long castle. So this my point here is to start with d6, and after short castle only now to go a5 to avoid these sorts of things with long castle. The other line which I actually faced in the Olympiad is a5, but here after bishop b4 check, bishop d2 takes, and now either knight takes d2 or queen takes d2. Here, I think my opponent in the Olympiad played knight d2, and here black has this important plan of rook b8 and then b5 when black equalizes pretty comfortably. But my opponent went short castle, and now I go a5, bishop e3, and here I was thinking for a bit because I knew that bishop takes e3 is the best move. But after f takes e3, I couldn't really recall the lines here, and white usually gets some initiative on the king side, and I couldn't recall exactly what to do here. I knew that this regrouping with 97, knight g6 should be done at some point, but for example, 97 right away could even run into knight g5, so white has all sorts of tactics here. And yeah, I wasn't that familiar with them anymore. So I went bishop a7, which I knew that it existed, and I just kind of wanted to throw off my opponent here. I knew that this is inferior to bishop takes e3, but still black has a solid position. And the idea is just that I don't want to take on e3, allowing white to open up the f-file. He went knight c3, and now I went h6, which in hindsight is not really a great move. I should just castle right away. I was a bit afraid of bishop g5, but my opponent told me there is an exactly same line with the bishop on c5 instead of a7, which is just nothing for white. Here black has many ideas. I even saw during the game bishop g4 is one idea, and now black can just go something like knight d4, then g5, and black has a really good game. So if I would have just castled right away, he would have like a worse version compared to what happened in the game. But I went h6 just like a careless move, and after takes, now he has d4, and now like it is quite a big difference that I'm not castled yet. But I wasted this move on h6. And here I already was feeling some pressure, and I spent a lot of time, like 25 minutes, which is way too much, and I castled. But it was not so easy to evaluate here, because bishop g4 was the move I intended first. But here I didn't like bishop b5, and now after e takes d4, queen takes d4, even attacking the rook. So here I was calculating bishop f3, queen f3, ed4, knight e2, short castle, bishop c6, bc6, knight takes d4. When this position looked pretty unpleasant for me, the pawn on c6 is weak, and whenever I play c5, of course now there is even knight c6, but let's say I go something like queen d7, let's say rook e1, c5, there is always knight b5, and this knight will be hard to kick out. So therefore, in the end, I decided to go short castle. I also thought about taking here, but yeah, this sort of position I didn't really like. If, let's say, white takes on c6, f4, it looked pretty dangerous for me. So I castled short, and here I had to see the following variation in this endgame, that knight b5 doesn't do anything because of rook a6, and he cannot take on c7 because of rook c6. And yeah, still I had to double check everything here. For example, rook d1, it still does look a bit dangerous, but here I thought I can go rook d7, and sooner or later c6 will come, or rook c6, and there is nothing here for white. But my opponent went rook d1, which was very accurate. Now rook f8, I have to go here. If I exchange here, then white is already threatening rook d8 as well, and I'm in a lot of trouble. So I went rook f8, f4, also well spotted my opponent, knight g4, the best defense, knight d5, again, the correct continuation. So my opponent also told me after the game that he has to do something quick here, otherwise I will get c6, and there will probably just be nothing here for white. So knight g4, I'm threatening knight e3, therefore he goes knight d5, and here bishop e6, again, probably the correct idea. I was calculating a long time c6, but after knight e7 check, king h7, bishop f7 was the problem. And yeah, this double attack here, the fork with the knight doesn't do anything. After bishop g6 check, king h8, bishop h5, and something is coming here, knight g6. I thought this is pretty bad, and I checked it with the computer. It turns out to be already lost for black. So I went bishop e6, which is the best defense, and here he took on e5, which allows me to equalize. Rook e1 apparently is the best move, which yeah is pretty hard to see as a human being, and I still don't really quite get what's like. Of course, he wants to stop knight e3 at some point, but rook e1 just looks very logical, stepping out of away from the d file. So I took on e5, and here I took on d5. I was also considering king h7 here, but actually, I didn't see the refutation, but I asked my opponent. He said bishop e2 is probably quite unpleasant for me. Yeah, and he was correct. Here I'm just much worse because after bishop d5, he has bishop g4, and here his rook would enter to d7, and it's just bad for me. So yeah, he took on e5, which surprised me a lot, because now after takes, I have this fork knight e3, but he's just playing for long-term compensation by giving up the exchange, and it's actually still equal, and probably from a practical point of view, quite unpleasant for me. I was also thinking about knight takes e5 here, which might be a smarter decision from a practical point, but after bishop b3, I thought the position is still a bit unpleasant because white will probably get d6 at some point, and generally the bishop and the rooks are a better combo than knight and rook. So here I thought I'm suffering a little bit, and I didn't really see the problem with knight e3. I thought it is probably a bit unpleasant for me, but yeah, I thought this should be the way. In hindsight, maybe knight takes e5 would have been a bit smarter. I went knight e3, rook d4, took on f1, and here I went rook e8, which is the incorrect decision. Rook a8 turns out to be much better, just bringing the rook back right away. And after king f2, what I calculated here, I think instead he should go d6 when, yeah, apparently this is somehow equal. I analyzed here something. Yeah, also what I didn't see was the computer showed this idea here with rook h8 when black is already playing for an advantage. The idea is king f8, king e7, but I didn't see this idea at all. So yeah, bringing the rook up right away would have been better, but instead I went rook e8. He went d6, c6, now king f2. And my original idea was to go b6 and then to bring the rook, but this then I thought is pretty slow. I thought he can just now bring his king, and when I block this pawn, now I'm threatening to take here, but after king f4, I didn't really see a plan for me, and yeah, this just looked pretty bad for me. So I went rook a8, forcing him to make a decision, because now if he goes king f3, now I can take on e5. And he played d7, which again allowed me to equalize. e6 is the best move. When after f takes e6, king e3, the king is coming in, and I'm basically just lost. I saw this idea, but I didn't think it would be that bad. But the king is just coming to e5, and yeah, this is totally hopeless. He went d7 instead, and now it's back to equality. Rook e8, e6, takes. He didn't take, sorry. He went rook f4. If takes, I will get my king to e7. That was his point by playing rook f4 first. That just to cut off my king. g5, bishop e6, king g7. I was also calculating rook f8, But here after bishop e6, king h7, king e3, unfortunately I cannot take on f4 because then I'm not in time and his king will just run in and win the game. And of course here I could also go king g6. I was talking about this with my opponent a bit after the game. Now he would probably go something like king rook e4, and we have a similar position, just the pawn is not on g5, and we were both not sure if it's good or bad for me. I thought during the game that g5 is a good inclusion for me. Probably objectively it's around the same, but yeah, bishop e6 check, king g7, rook e4, and now I went rook f8 check. Still okay. I should probably look for counterplay right away, b5. That would be the best choice here. I went rook f8 check, king e3, and now I made a huge blunder. Already in quite a lot of time pressure, I went rook f4 just to exchange these rooks, and I thought that this position was holdable for me, but it turns out it's just lost because yeah, I'm just completely paralyzed here. Instead, I think that rook a8 was the move, which was very important. The idea is that White's plan here in general is to go king d4 and then to run in with the king. And with rook d8, this is fantastic prophylaxis because now after king d4, I have rook e8. And now he cannot move the king to c5 because I can just take on d7 when I would even win the game. So after rook d8, he would do something slow probably on the king side. Still, the position is pretty unpleasant for me, but here I'm still hanging on. Instead, I went rook f4, and this position, yeah, is lost, even though, again, I didn't see it right away. I went h5 to slow down his counterplay on his play on the king side, for him to make a passed pawn. He just went g3, which is good enough. Apparently h4 is also winning, and then g4. I thought if he would keep the, let's say rook d8, g4, I thought having the h-pawn for him is probably a bit of a worse version, but it turns out it's also winning. He went g3, rook b8. I wanted to get b5. If b5 right away, my issue was bishop e4, and then I would lose the pawn on c6. So I went rook b8, h3, b5, g4 takes, b takes a4, g5 check, king e7, g6, and here I realized that I cannot take on b2 because probably because of many things. Maybe also king g5 is winning, maybe also g7 is winning. But d8 queen wins right away because now after g7 I cannot stop promotion. I was also looking at this a bit during the game and I couldn't figure out what's happening. Maybe also this is winning, just bishop h7, and yeah, the pawn is stopped in time because the bishop on g8 controls the a2 square. Looks also winning. So here I went king f6, therefore denying the e5 square for the white king, g7. And now I can never take on g7 because now king e5, king d6 again will decide the game. I went rook d8, and here there was only one winning move. I think it was only one winning move for my opponent, but he didn't find it. He went c4. And this, again, allowed me a chance to save a draw, actually, but it was the 39th move, and I didn't have enough time. I just went rook b8 here. Instead, I should go c5, and it's somewhat of a study-like position. Now it's a draw because white is the one in Zugzwang, and this brings us to the correct move here. c3 is the right move. And if black goes c5, now c4, and now white is winning, because now if I go rook b8, what is now? Let me think. Bishop e4. And now if rook d8, I assume bishop c6. Is that correct? Yeah. That's the point. And in the game he played c4, and now after c5 he can never move the bishop, because now after king g7, bishop c6, I gain a tempo. Now I get king f6, and now the king cannot enter in. So here he will probably have to repeat moves, king e4, rook b8, king f4, and rook d8. If he runs in with the king now, I would even win, because here I have rook g8, which is very important. And if king c7, I take on g7, he cannot promote. And here I assume that this pawn endgame is just winning from king d4, king c4 is coming. But yeah, unfortunately, I didn't see that. I just went rook b8 back, and now after c5, all of these pawn endgames are just lost because the pawn is still on c6 and not on c5. So c5 is actually not really a hard move to see. I'm pretty upset about that. Instead, I went rook b8, and after c5, rook d8, king e4, rook b8, and now bishop h7. This is the final winning idea. And after king g7, king e5. Yeah, I have to take on g7 because otherwise he would just promote the pawn. King e5, king h7, and now was actually still like an important moment. I think the only winning move for him, which he played, king f6. I think that's actually quite instructive because if he goes d6, then probably I'm the one winning, rook b2, and now if he promotes, I have rook d2 check, picking up the queen. And if he goes king e6, I have king g6, king e7, king f5, and yeah, now here I think I would also even win because in the end I have a3, ba3, a4, again with Zugzwang. I'm not sure if this is actually winning, probably, yeah. King c4, king a5, it's probably a draw. This is probably a draw, yeah. Yeah, draw. It's a draw, but my opponent unluckily found king f6, and now I have neither rook takes b2, and I also don't have king g6 with bringing the king. So here I played a couple of moves, but this is just lost because he just has the queen against the rook. Played a couple of moves, and here I resigned because probably I will even lose the rook. I was hoping that I would get rook versus queen and try to defend that, which is also objectively lost, but I didn't even manage to pick up the pawn on c5. So overall, I'm pretty disappointed, I have to say, especially since my opponent gave me this chance here at the end of the game with c4. If I play c5, it's probably just a draw. And yeah, overall, I just had my chances, yeah, like many times. For example, here I could take on e5 as well, and this rook endgame, this sort of endgame, if I play rook a8, it also gives me good chances, at least to hold, maybe even to play it. Like it's a 3-result game here at this point. So yeah, pretty disappointed, especially now that the tournament is somehow just going in the wrong direction. I've lost 2 games. I made half a point out of the last 3 rounds, which is of course not great, but yeah, I'll try to come back and try to finish the tournament on a good note. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's recap. If you did, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Other than that, take care and see you tomorrow.